Greetings. Little short story I got for you. This was about, well, I say early 90s, but really 1991. From 1989 to 1991, I was, in essence, they called it business office manager instead of director of patient accounting. Exact same position. But at this particular hospital, I was business office manager. And I had 76 people who reported to me. And when I got there were all kind of problems. So we worked our way through them. And within a year and a half, we had gotten to a place where we had increased our cash by $12 million. We had brought AR down by $20 million. And this was not a big hospital. So those are big numbers for what we did at the time. Then there were a whole lot of different things that happened. They moved my total department out of the hospital into a place downtown in that particular town. And then they decided that they were going to give this major test because it was a city hospital, which basically meant that they had to follow civil service laws. So they gave all my people a test. They hadn't given a test in 10 years. Decided to give a test, and 85% of my folks failed. Well, you couldn't basically get rid of 85% of the people for the hospital. Some of those people had been there a while. So they got kind of lowered into a different class where they didn't need a test. Some of them made a lot less money, but at least they kept their jobs. They were not happy. There was nothing I could do about it. I passed my test. I was the only person for my job who actually passed the test. So there you go. And so what happened is that we had that issue. We had an issue trying to get used to being downtown instead of being at the hospital. Some other things came up. And by by October of that year, I was informed that I was being let go. And the CFO at the time says, well, maybe you weren't ready for this job. And at first, I was really depressed. I was depressed for about a week and a half. And then I started thinking, wait a minute. We made some great strides. We did some great things. The numbers showed well. How the devil are they saying I wasn't prepared for the job? So I decided to sue. I got a local lawyer, probably the wrong lawyer, but he was the only one who would take the case to go against the city. And this is the problem when you're going against a city hospital. The judge was a city employee. The lawyer was a city employee. Matter of fact, everyone else was considered a city employee. I was considered a city employee. So there was no way that I was going to really win this, but I had to do it because then there was the option that I could appeal it. And so we start going through the case, and then it stopped after a day. No idea why. They made me an offer that was a real lowball offer. I decided to go against it. So we had to wait about 5 months before we could do it again. So we get to doing it again. Now, their city lawyer has changed because he's now running for mayor of the town. The judge had changed. Now it's a totally different judge. And some of the people who were representing the hospital didn't come back. And I didn't think about it at the time. It just, nothing. I don't know why it didn't occur to me. And one of the things that was going on through the case, because, it could have gone either way based on how I was seeing it, although my lawyer said, don't expect us to win this because we're fighting basically City Hall. We're not going to win this thing, but maybe we can appeal later on. And one of the things I started to recognize is that they were bringing up things that I didn't know at the time. I was 31 years old. I knew a lot about my job, but I didn't know a lot about this particular area. Accounting area. I didn't know a lot then. And so they brought this stuff up. I couldn't really counter any of it because I wasn't sure what they were talking about at the time. They did mention a few other things. I was able to counter that. But when the decision came down, everything came down against me except for one thing. That wasn't going to get me the job back. So now I'm ready to go for an appeal, only my lawyer was having legal issues. And he was now no longer available. And in the long run, just to throw in a little added thing, he lost his license. And once he lost his license, I didn't have to finish paying him. And it's a good thing because he sent me a bill for almost $20,000. It's like, wow, where am I going to get that? I just lost my job. Anyway, years later, I run into a guy who was one of the people who was supporting the company that was supporting the hospital at the time. And I said to him, can you tell me what happened way back then? I mean, all the stuff they were saying, there was something wrong with it, and I've been mad at that hospital ever since. And what he said is, well, they were telling us that you were responsible for this one area that was failing. And if you remember, one of the things they did is they decided to move your department out and move in another department. They spent all kind of money on that, and it lost money immediately. I said, yeah, I remember that, because a week before I called over there and said, hey, where are charges? What charges do you have for this? And they hadn't set up any charges. So I set up the charges, and I set up a fee schedule so you could, do allowances, and almost everybody who came ended up having their bill written off. It was totally investigated wrong. I don't know why they did that. They said that whole thing was your fault. And initially we just went along with it because we didn't know what the structure was, who reported to who, and who came up with it. During the time after the first case was stopped because, there were all kind of changes going on, we found out that they had lied about you. The problem was that we represented them. So now we couldn't turn around and say anything about that because of confidentiality laws. So what we could do was say, we're not going back. And if you had known that, then you could have challenged it and you probably would have won the case. But we couldn't say anything. And I appreciated that he told me that. And I actually ended up going back to the hospital. The people who had set me up were totally gone a long time ago, a long time after that, because, they got caught on their own. They couldn't help me out at that point because, no one really wanted the word to get out, but word got out. It just didn't get out to me because I didn't live in that town. In the meantime, I got that same position at a different hospital years later. And what I decided to do was to learn about all these other things that I didn't know at that time. Because even though I got to another hospital where there were all kind of problems, I said, you know what, I need to know some of these other things. And that was really part of what I used to do a lot of, which is I used to go in and learn all the different jobs. The first time I worked in healthcare as a medical biller, I decided to learn as much from all the other departments as I could. And by the time I left, I knew all the jobs in there. I didn't know all the supervisory stuff, but I knew how to do every job in every single department. And then when I did medical billing for physicians and I was a regional director, I learned how to do all those jobs, and I learned about coding and certain other things. And then I applied all of that when I got to my first hospital in a true leadership position. I applied all of that stuff, and we did well because I had learned a lot of that stuff, but I hadn't learned all the accounting stuff. So I get to my new hospital, and I learned it all. And that's kind of what I want to talk about right now, is the fact that sometimes you get yourself to a place where you think, okay, I've learned everything I need to know about the job I do, and now I don't have to learn anything else about that except make sure that I stay on top of this particular job and keep my folks informed, and this is all I care about. But I'm warning you, everybody, whether you're an employee or whether you're in leadership, never stop learning. Try to learn what everyone else does at the same time as much as you can if there's any possibility it can affect you. For instance, for me, I had to learn all the other departments in the hospital so that I could help them to increase their revenue and show them how to capture charges, which is what led me to become a consultant, because now I can do that pretty much anywhere. As a matter of fact, I have done that all across the country, even one hospital here in New York. Never stop learning. Always try to make yourself invaluable. Now, the other side of that, of course, is that I ended up losing my job again when they moved everything to another city. But they couldn't say that I didn't know what I was doing because my numbers were fine. So at least I didn't lose a job by someone trying to tell me that I didn't know what I was doing like they did years earlier. And of course, I was older and I was ready to go. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on that. Do you believe that as a leader, all you need to know is the stuff that people report to you on that you lead? Or do you really believe, and are you willing to learn as much as possible about everyone else? You may still lose your job, but it's always valuable stuff. Let me know your thoughts. My name is Mitch Mitchell. I hope you have a wonderful day.